Started on kind of the big news of the week, Donald Trump's Supreme Court pick, and you could pick what headline you chose to read. I have the neutral one of Trump chooses Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court instead of Democrats panic at Supreme Court pick and Republicans rejoice. So we'll start with the neutral one, and I'm going to give you first crack at it, Nolan.
Well, you could put any name in those two headlines, and the reaction would have been the same. I mean, Democrats were going to object to anyone, and Republicans were going to rejoice over anyone. I think in Kavanaugh, you've got a guy who for 12 years has been a conservative thought leader on the Washington District Court, second most important court in the land, a guy who has been respected by his colleagues from both sides of the political divide on that court. He's a good, solid judge. He has all the credentials you would look for in a justice. He's a solid legal mind. I don't know how you do much better in picking a justice. If you got to, once you accept the idea that a Republican is going to pick a conservative justice and a liberal is going to pick, or a Democrat is going to pick a liberal justice, his qualifications match anyone else who has been named to that court.
Do you subscribe to the thought that Nolan's saying is, look, you could put almost anybody in there that a Republican pick is going to be a Republican pick?
Well, no, I don't. I actually don't. I think Brett Kavanaugh is a more acceptable. If you are progressive and liberal, I think there are a number of reasons that Brett Kavanaugh is more acceptable than some of the other people who are on the list. In fact, this is a really institutional pick, right? D.C. Circuit is the training ground for the Supreme Court. There are more justices from that court on the high court than other circuits because the work is very similar. This is a judge who hadn't deviated a whole lot from that institutional work or line when he's been there. It's not a place that you find nutty justices.
So what is the big fear that people have?
I mean, the fear is that this is somebody who might entertain the idea that settled precedents are not so settled. So beyond Roe v. Wade, which is the sort of hot button one, you have lots of civil rights law that is in the balance right now, hanging in the balance, voting rights law that the court has been chipping away at. What role will he play in those, and will it be different? Really, is the question from Justice Kennedy, who he's replacing, who was also a deeply conservative judge from sort of the institutional ranks. I think the issue for Democrats is how hard do you fight against this to remind people of how we got here? The only judge who's more qualified for this role than Brett Kavanaugh is Merrick Garland. And everybody in Washington knows that. And the tragedy of what was done to Merrick Garland is the thing that I think Democrats
or Barbara Bork or Miguel Estrada. I mean, this has been going on for decades.
Let me ask you this. How does this pick play, Nolan, in the midterm elections? How does it affect it one way or another?
Well, I mean, I don't think this pick will be particularly influential in the elections. I mean, it's done, it's over by the time the elections get here. If the confirmation process goes as expected, I think this is a guy who, during his 12 years, has shown respect for precedent on the court. He's a pretty institutional, as Steve said, legal mind here. He's not going to walk way off the dock. He's in the mold of Gorsuch, perhaps maybe a little closer to John Roberts, and I would not expect John Roberts to deviate much for president either. That's not who they are.
The thing that you got to watch out for if you're the Republicans is the wild card, right? The thing that you don't know about that's in somebody's background that comes out during the run-up to hearings or hearings themselves.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think that they would have vetted that? Well, I mean, when you get the opportunity.
There's some things you don't know.
You do what you can. There's this story today in the Washington Post that the White House leaked, by the way, about this guy running up all kinds of debt.
He's got a baseball
baseball tickets, which I'm not sure I believe that's what he's actually doing. But
$75,000 in credit card. I mean, when you look at his resources, he's a person of very modest means, and as we were talking before the show, that is,
he'd be rich anywhere else.
Well, wait, $75,000 in baseball tickets?
That's what they claim, which strikes me as.
And the White House is saying,
how do you rack that up?
Sort of sounds to me like they're getting out in front of something that maybe might look
and who knows?
uglier.
But it does you know, if you look at the other members of the court, there are a lot of people there who are not wealthy. This is not the
I don't think it's a question of as
economically
well.
elite.
I don't think
It's also a question of judgment, though, if you're racking up that kind of debt on baseball,
absolutely.
and
on
susceptibility
baseball tickets.
to compromise, right?
Absolutely.
He's got a lot of debt.
But you know,
right.
fortunately, he's not going to be in charge of any fiscal
But other than that, this is a guy who probably sails through the voting process,
Yeah.
right? The confirmation hearing is going to be rough, and they should be.
Okay. Well, let me